Hello, and thank you for joining. A warm welcome to day 6 of our Fair Africa Fortnight campaign that we have themed Buy Local, Build Africa. The purpose of this campaign is to highlight the positive impact that local business has on our economy and how we as consumers can help change the socio-economic status of our countries by supporting locally, ethically, and fairly trading businesses. Today we hear from Wangeshi Gitata Kiriga, Senior Advisor at Kijani Group, as she chats to Tembisile Mnisi, who leads the Fair Trade Towns campaign in Drakenstein Municipality. Together they discuss the differences in consumer traits in Kenya and South Africa and how much consumers understand the power they have in determining what local retailers stock on their shelves. Please remember to register now for our first ever virtual walkathon themed Strides for Africa, which will be on the 2nd of October. Registration details will show at the end of the live stream. Add your voice to the cause to support local businesses and build African economies. Enjoy.
Good morning, Wangeshi. I'm Tembi Mnisi, and I'm a project coordinator for Fair Trade Towns campaign in Drakenstein Municipality in South Africa.
Well, nice to hear from you, Tembi. I am Wangeshi Gitata Kiriga. I'm a consultant based in Nairobi, Kenya, and my organization is called the Kijani Group. And I'm so excited that we're having this conversation today because it's all about fair trade, isn't it?
Yes, all about fair trade and the importance of buying local and the power that we have as consumers to actually give some benefits and improve our economies and increase jobs, especially after the time that we've had within the last year and a half. And then tell me, in Kenya, is it do you have more of market stores, big businesses that are thriving there right now?
What we've seen really, especially in the wake of the pandemic, of course, was everything sort of slowing down. Then we also had curfew, not as strict as the lockdown that you had in South Africa, but that also had an influence in how people were purchasing and where people were purchasing from. So what we did see during that time especially was a rise in the use of digital platforms. We had some supermarkets that were not doing deliveries before, at least in Nairobi, starting to put up whether it's apps or partnering with delivery organizations to go ahead and do that. What was also curious is also, that whole idea of, how did consumers use their power, right, to influence what ended up being stocked? That's a really good question. I'm not sure what the differences were during the pandemic or not, but what I can say is that we've really seen that happening, where consumers influence the decisions being made by the asks that they have. So I'll give you a quick example. A few years ago, there was a whole thing about Kenyan tea not being at the front of a particular supermarket, and it was an imported tea that was at the front of the supermarket. So the irony was that, yes, indeed, it was still Kenyan black tea, probably blended in with another one, but it was an international brand at the front of the store in the home of the best tea in the world, which is Kenya. So there's been a really big push for, buy local, build local. We're seeing that happening with the Manufacturing Association. We're seeing that happening with what we call Brand Kenya, which is actually a government agency that helps to push locally made products, both for local consumption and also for export.
Well, in South Africa, I want to touch on especially the influence of government in ensuring that policies are in place a little bit later. But in terms of how the markets turned here was that, people, especially during the lockdown and when the pandemic started, people started to be more conscious about, listen, we want to buy South Africa, we want to buy local, we want to buy things that come from within the African continent. And I think that was mainly the push for, if things are coming out due to the hard lockdown that we had, we didn't have an influx of imports because of the rules, regulations, sanitation and everything. So we sort of there was a huge shock to our system, and we were forced to say, wait, so if we cannot buy from these giants, do we have South African products to fall back on? And that actually happened. So it was an advantage. And I think it was a wake-up call for a lot of us as consumers, that now we can actually go to a store. The other day I went to a store to go buy, one of the major stores, to go buy lasagna. And I got there and it said imported from Italy. And I couldn't understand why lasagna sheets, which are mainly flour, and in Drakenstein, I mean, we have very good wheat. We plant a lot of wheat, which is flour, oil, and canola that we plant here. And I think an egg and water. So I couldn't understand why it needed to come from Italy when it could be from South Africa. And proceeded to call the manager and ask them, is there any way that I could get pasta that is South African pasta? And they just said, no, we don't have the pasta. We only have this one. And I wrote a letter, and now the store actually is considering procuring pasta from a South African brand. That showed me how just asking that question and them saying, listen, we will try, we may not be able to, but we will try, that could change not maybe that one store that is in my neighborhood, but a couple that maybe are in our region. And that showed the power that I have as a consumer to dictate how people want to treat their stuff. You know, don't just go into a store and walk about like, you know, you are an island. You can influence the quality of products we get, the local products we get, because coming from a Fair Trade Towns campaign perspective, it is important for us to ensure that we're building sustainable jobs, and buying local does that. So it cannot be government's problem or government's purpose alone to create that. I, with my $5, 5 rand, can actually create jobs.
You know, sometimes the argument that we get back, and I say we, and I'm putting we with you and I and all those guys who are really about fair trade, and the question is always, oh, you know, but am I going to pay extra? And sometimes I think that the question should be flipped on its head, and the question sometimes should be, how come this is so cheap? Because if it is that cheap, somebody somewhere is being squeezed in order for you to be able to get that price point. And if somebody somewhere is being squeezed, it's usually very often the most vulnerable in that particular supply chain, whether it is workers or whether it is farmers. They're the ones who end up being squeezed. So when you find something that is going for, and I think that consumers, yes, it's true, we want to get something at a lower price. We want to get quality at the least possible price that we want, which is okay. It's sort of like the thing that you want to do. But you should ask yourself, is it going to, who else is being squeezed in order for me to be able to get this? And to what extent can you influence what is happening by the purchasing choices that you're making? One of the things that we've also seen, and I guess going back to this whole idea of the pandemic, but even prior to the pandemic, you know, was the fact that the historic paths to purchases have really changed, right? The supply chains have I like the word that Musa from WFTO had used, which is have been deconstructed, right? So these connections are much shorter, and you can even have direct sales from producers to consumers just because of the power of the internet. And then also, what is it that social media has been able to do in this particular space? How has this I guess disrupted markets in South Africa? It would be really good to hear from you. Are there TikTok farmers? I don't know. Tell me.
Yes, we see that in South Africa with regards to dairy farmers. Dairy farmers are there's portions of a market that sell milk extremely cheap. And that has shown us that there is a problem somewhere down the line. And usually it's the farmers that bear the brunt of people wanting to buy cheaper. Not only the fact that also affects either the product has been really deconstructed to the point that it's no longer the original product. But I mean, I think a lot of consumer education is required. And hence the move or the drive to advocate or to join the fair trade movement, because that tells a consumer, says Tembi, yes, you want to buy tea for 92 cents. But the implications of that are that the person who is actually planting that tea, harvesting, is unable to pay wages for people to live their everyday lives. And what does that mean? It means the kids can't go to school. It means so then once people can identify with something like that, then they can say, oh, wait, my choice to buy this cheaper tea or this cheaper milk has a direct effect on a person. So I would rather buy more responsibly and not necessarily more expensive. So we don't look at it from a price perspective. We look at it more from an impact perspective. And I think we've got a lot of ground to cover. And I'm happy that, young Africans are taking on the baton, and we really want to change that culture within our continent, and to educate people about, how they've got the power to advocate, the power to create these sustainable, sometimes social enterprises that thrive within Africa. So I'm very excited about that. But I mean, in terms of the changes within the markets, we've seen that the internet has changed drastically. I mean, research has been done recently on how people, I mean, personally, I was scared to buy online. I mean, I used to, but I would think, a few, minutes first, do I really need this? And then I would do it. But right now, I don't even flinch. If I would like chicken, I go onto the website of the chicken producer and buy it, and then they've got a collection spot for me that I can go collect, or they come and deliver. So the world has changed. Like the supply chain has shortened, and that should be more sustainable, and that should improve traceability and advocate for traceability. But again, I think it's up to us to get the information out there on what we need to look for and what we need to blast.
And sort of speaking of e-commerce, and it's quite exciting that, especially like in Kenya, people really use WhatsApp to run their businesses, right? So you'd have like somebody has, if they've slaughtered their chicken, we call our sort of like our traditional breed, we call it kienyeji, right? This is sort of like free range, and typically organic chicken that is a little bit more muscular, so to speak, than like the broiler ones. And those are really, really popular, right? They're the ones that we feel have a better taste. So if somebody has, they slaughtered their chicken, they're ready to go to the market, they just put there on their status update, Kienyeji chicken available at, 500 shillings a kilo or whatever the case is. And then you just put a few pictures there of a few cuts or whatever, and people respond and they write to you on in response to your status update. They call you, you do the delivery, because we've got a lot of we call them boda boda, motorcycle deliveries in Kenya. Don't even necessarily have to be formalized. So we are seeing quite a bit of that, where a producer is going directly to the market based on even just their phone, where their phone becomes this this advertising space. We're also seeing that happening quite a bit on platforms like Instagram or even Twitter, and these are even the more formalized groups. I was looking at a study that was done by the Central Bank of Kenya. And what they were looking at was that in Kenya, which was quite interesting, that there was an enhanced use of digital platforms last year, especially during the pandemic, with a huge, a 15% increase of women customers using digital platforms, compared to an 8% increase in male customers using the same platform. And then the other thing too that was quite interesting is that over the last year, from February 2020 to February 2021, there was a 59% increase of transactions in the volume of transactions done by women, which came to 398 million shillings compared to 250 million the year before. So that was really quite exciting when you look at what's happening there. But so digital has really disrupted the marketplace for a lot of consumers. We can see that it is favoring a lot more inclusion, right? Because this way, even a small consumer, or a small producer can go in and the world is your oyster. You can sell as far as your platform allows you, right? As long as you've got a way to get the product to the consumer, certainly the digital space has allowed you to be able to do that. So kudos to that particular technology disruption. Yeah.